Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube, and it's my favorite show of the week, as always, Sam. Our Wednesday show where we could just do all sorts of fun stuff. It's all brought to you by PrizePicks. We'll have my PrizePicks lineup later today. You can download the PrizePicks app today. Use code Check the Mic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. Ready for a great show?
Indeed.
Do you know what we have coming up?
What do we have coming up, Steve?
We have Brandon Thorn.
Excellent.
Talking all things offensive line. We've got us against the Shouty Shows, as always, the future award-winning segment. We're going to talk Bill Belichick and his potential landing spots, because a lot's happened. He's got a new Bible out there and everything. Bible. Bill Belichick, we're going to talk about him a little bit. And autopsy time is the Raiders.
The Raiders.
We're going to give the cause of death for the Las Vegas Raiders. The other big announcement that we have today, you see the link right here on YouTube and link in the description. We have merch now.
Well, we've had merch for a while. Now we have additional merch. We have Shouty Show merch.
We do. Look at that. I don't know which one I like best. We got a little
there's options.
Stop. We've got the no Shouty Shows. We have multiple ways of grabbing shirts and hoodies that are Shouty Show inspired.
Yep, and a couple of those have a different color variant as well. You can get a gray T-shirt instead of just the black one. Other ones you can't because of light text would make that difficult.
And so we're gonna do a giveaway now that we have the new merch. You can check out the merch, link in the description. But we have giveaway opportunity here. So we've asked over the last few weeks your favorite obscure stat or fact of the week. How about in NFL history? If you send us your favorite obscure stat or fact in NFL history, we'll pick a couple winners and send some merch out to the winners. We'll do that next week. Next Wednesday show. That sound good? Mm-hmm. Which I'll be doing from parents' basement.
Oh.
Going back to, I shouldn't announce this on air because of all the famous people getting their houses robbed.
You think you qualify?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow, just down the street, Joe Burrow had his house robbed while they were live on Monday night. I should not announce that maybe I'm leaving town for a couple weeks. I
haven't been to Joe Burrow's house. I've been to yours, but I would be surprised if there wasn't more in his house to rob than yours.
I mean, I would kind of encourage somebody to come in and maybe clean out all the kids' toys and all that stuff. Helpful. Maybe clean it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I will announce it on there. Maybe I'll be in my parents' basement next week.
Drop a pin.
Go ahead.
Give the Google address.
Yes.
Really
feel free.
Set it up. Leave the door open.
Clean my house while I'm gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're gonna have fun with that. So send us obscure stat and fact from NFL history, and if you just want to buy stuff, link is in the description. All sorts of fun merch, Shouty Show stuff, Check the Mic, my logo, my face, your face, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And there's in the Discord, I've been soliciting feedback on various designs, so that was sort of just for the Shouty Show stuff, but fire any and all feedback into that thread, and we'll, if there's good stuff in there, we can potentially use that.
One thing we've struggled with is some people put catchphrases, and years ago we had creep back toward average, and
Did you like my Lions suggestion? I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, do enough. I mean, I only said it once that Lions fans pay the bills.
Well, people embraced it. I think we had a Lions colored shirt that simply said, Lions fan, here to pay the bills.
Paying the bills?
Here to pay the bills, because that was what a bunch of people were dropping in the chat. Lions fans,
here to pay the bills.
Honolulu Blue, Lions fans, here to pay the bills, and then maybe, one pride or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that would be great as a
I like
t-shirt.
that. Yeah, I like that. Let's build it.
Look at me over here. I'm just designing
merch. Let that design go. If there's any catchphrase or thing that we say, like the number of times I say again, just do again, ... Steve's,
doesn't feel like a great shirt.
Terrible, overused phrase. Let us know if there's anything that we say that would be good on a shirt. All right, we also have to talk Monday Night Football. We'll fly through this, though. Cincinnati Bengals get the win over the Dallas Cowboys. It was the Simpsons game. 27-20 was the final. Most notable by the blocked punt in which the Cowboys touch the ball, lose possession. Bengals get the ball back. Jamar Chase, game-winning touchdown. Another big game from Joe Burrow, but a monster game from Jamar Chase with 14 catches for 177 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Jamar Chase was the entire offense, and the offense was working through Jamar Chase. It's kind of crazy. Joe Burrow had a pretty good game, but made a couple of big mistakes, which he hadn't made, in previous weeks. But it's the same story. Like, that offense needs to be incredibly good for them to have a shot of winning the game. And even with it being incredibly good, they needed a special teams play bouncing their way to really be able to get that win. ridiculous special teams error. I mean, they block the punt, they do the good thing, and then they try to field the live ball. As soon as you do that, it's up for grabs. And the Bengals, Oruwariye goofed it, didn't field it cleanly, and the Bengals were able to recover, and that's the drive they scored the go-ahead winning touchdown on.
Yeah, so Burrow continues his monster season. I thought he played, overall a pretty efficient game. Like you said, there was a pick in there that wasn't great, but overall was pretty good. Cincinnati finally pulls one off instead of letting it slip away at the end. And both teams 5-8 now coming out of that.
Yeah,
had some questions earlier today if Trey Lance is ever going to start for the Cowboys. Maybe
they're saying no.
I know. Maybe at the end of the season, you just see. I mean, for a guy that needs reps, I know it's not great, but Cincinnati now, per ESPN analytics, 3% chance of making the playoffs. So still technically alive. Still alive over there.
Micah Parsons was incredible in this game. I mean, one of the big differences between the two teams was Dallas's defense was actually a presence in large part because of Micah Parsons. The Bengals could not just, well, A, couldn't block him, and B, couldn't just sort of sit back and take all the time they wanted because Micah Parsons was going to get pressure and cause them issues. And the other terrible thing for the Dallas defense is Demarion Overshown tears his knee up, and badly. We kind of thought this was coming based off A, the look of it, and then B, how quickly they ruled him out of the game. Usually if you get the kind of instant he's out, it means they know the injury is very severe and there's no shot whatsoever. The report was he'd torn basically all of his knee ligaments. Yeah. Like multiple, I think 3, the ACL, the PCL, and the MCL. The only glimmer of optimism or hope was that the meniscus was intact and the sort of surface was okay. It was just like a complete tear of the ligaments. So long-term injury for him. You're not going to be seeing him at the start of next year, for example. That's a real bummer for a player who's been
maybe all of next year.
Maybe, yeah. But at least, definitely he's not ready for week 1,
Yeah.
That kind of injury. Really unfortunate for a young player that had been playing well for them.
Yeah, he had been playing really well, flying around. Like I said, a lot of people like him. Athletic presence for the Cowboys at linebacker, and he was a 2023 third-round pick. Missed all of the 23 season. Played this year, of course, and likely to miss the majority of next season, if not all of it. So tough start to Overshown's career. And as I said, a lot of supporters around the league with his athleticism at linebacker. So hoping he recovers well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else on Monday Night Football? Uneventful game from two teams probably not making the playoffs until you get the Leon Lett-esque punt, issues.
Poor Leon Lett. The man's screwed up in like 2 historical ways in his career. The man had a pretty good NFL career, and the only thing anybody remembers him for is either one of 2 all-time screw-ups.
Diving on the ball in the snow, and then he was Deshaun Jackson before Deshaun Jackson, kind of.
Well, his at least was knocked out.
His was knocked out, yes. Yeah. He was holding the ball out.
Right. He didn't drop
on his way to the end zone, and Don Beebe saved the day to keep the Bills within 3 scores or whatever it was at the time during the Super Bowl. Look it up if you're young and you don't remember such things from the early 90s.
Yeah.
But that was it. Anything else on this before we get to Shouty Shows?
No, I think I know they got the win, but it was kind of another indictment of why the Bengals were never really going to be able to go on the run that people have been waiting for, because elements of that team were just too bad. I mean, the defense was not able to clamp down on a Cooper Rush-led Dallas offense, that doesn't have necessarily all of their superstars. It's the Bengals just don't have the horses this year to be able to be the contending team, even if Joe Burrow plays at an MVP level.
Yeah, that's why they have a 3% chance at this point. So they need a lot of things to break to sneak into the playoffs, but I think it's about over.
Yeah.
All right, tell you about our friends over at Harry's. Sometimes you just need a no-brainer gift that no one will want to swap out, like a solid shaving set. So right now you can get 50% off Harry's holiday craft set with a custom green gift box and free handle engraving. That's right. Perfect for the one guy that's impossible to shop for, even if that guy is you. So Sam and I both received our own set. Love the handle, the blades, good shave. It's all great. Love the packaging. It's classy. It's just a really nice set overall. So other products, you get hair and other grooming products that are that you can look through over at Harry's, and you've got the extra strength, high quality, amazing smelling deodorant for just $5. All sorts of other options as well. But what we're talking about today is the Harry's Holiday Craft Set, an outstanding gift. So it includes the one craft handle, your choice of either foaming shave gel or the shave cream, 2 extra blades, and then a travel blade cover. There's no gift wrapping required. The set comes in a rich, sleek green gift box that will stand out, and you can personalize it with available engraving options. It's also a risk-free purchase. Harry's offers a 100% money-back guarantee. Order by tomorrow, December 12th, to receive your holiday craft set by Christmas. So you got a day. Get this in. 50% off Harry's Holiday Craft Set, a custom green box and free handle engraving when you go to harrys.com/checkthemic. That's harrys.com/checkthemic for 50% off Harry's Holiday Craft Set. All right, man, let's get to our Shouty Shows of the day. We're going to have Shouty Shows, and then we're going to be talking with Brandon Thorn, all things offensive line. First up on the Shouty Shows, also really quick, welcome Nick Wright to the thumbnail. He asked to be a part of the Shouty Show thumbnail, and look, there he made it.
Sent him that yesterday. He's very pleased that he's now on the Shouty Show.
Is that the Mount Rushmore of Shouty Showers?
I mean, it's looking like it now.
It certainly does.
Thank you, by the way, to all the people that sent us in Nick Wright feedback. You know, we asked for people's feedback on whether that was a good thing to do, a bad thing, a betrayal of our Shouty Show principles. Yeah. The feedback was fairly well split down the middle with a complete and total, polarized
It was
data
basically
set.
like political feedback.
Yeah. It's like people either hated it with a passion and thought it was everything wrong with Shouty showing us just on this show. Yeah. And there were other people that thought it was great. Nick was fantastic, and it was a refreshing thing to have him on the show and get his take from that side of things. So I don't know what you do with that other than thank you for the feedback.
Yes, thanks for the feedback. Appreciate it. No lukewarm. If you have lukewarm feedback, I would love to hear that too.
We're just a middle-of-the-road moderate take on it. I could go either way on that. It was okay. It was fine. Blah, blah. No, it was either I loved it or I hated it.
But we appreciate it. A lot of people emailed about that, so thank you guys. All right, let's get to it. First one, Shouty Show time.
I just watched my worst nightmare. I'm out of my mind because the Cowboys had won 2 in a row, and I thought they were about to go down and win their 3rd in a row, and then they were going to go to Carolina and win their 4th in a row, and then they were going to come home and beat Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield on Sunday Night Football. Sure. That'd be 5 in a row, and then they were going to go to Philly and win 6 in a row, and then they're going to beat Washington at home because they just beat Washington at Washington. That would be 7 in a row, and that would get them at 10-7. And I thought that was about to happen, and then I leaped out of my seat and scared my little Maltese Hazel half to death when we blocked the punt with 2 minutes left. We had that game. We had that game. And down, down, down into Cowboy infamy history goes Oruwariye. And I just got another little piece of my heart ripped out.
Okay.
And it's going to take me a while to recover. It'll take a year off my life, I'm sure.
All right. I mean, he just kind of sounds sad now.
Yeah.
It's not shouty. It's just bummed.
That's just he's just a fan, man. I mean, that's just a fan saying, look, things haven't gone our way this season.
Yeah.
But if we just win out, which I expect.
I expected, as soon as we won a game, I just expected the next 8 to follow.
Yeah. We're just going to win out. Clearly, we're going to beat every team on the schedule, even if they're better than us.
Incrementally better teams. Yeah.
Which, by the way, the Carolina game, as you sent me today, Carolina favored over the Cowboys this weekend. First time Carolina's been favored in
since December 2022, was it?
Yeah.
I think I said
not one game in the 23 season, not one game in the 24 season to this point, heading into week 15. And
basically 2 straight years they have not been favored for a game, and they are favored for this Dallas game. So
Dr. Eager, man, turning things around over there.
Just making moves.
So I don't have much. I feel for Skip. I mean, that's what. Let me just say this. That's what happens when you buy into the Cooper Rush is better than Dak Prescott narrative that you created.
Yeah. Well, look, it's the sad demise of the Dallas Cowboys this year, but it's also the sad demise of Skip's place on Mount Rushmore of the Shouty Shows. Like, this is late stage Dan Marino we're watching here, right? The 99, was it Dan Marino, the final year where they're like
against my Jags, 62-7. It was 38-0 early in the second quarter. That's
where it's like, Dan, we love you. You're a hero. but you need to pack it up and go home.
We should do a watch along for that game.
Right. This that's what that was, right? There was no Shouty, there was no, razzmatazz. It was just a sad old man being bummed. That's not what we're here for.
No. Sad Skip. I mean, he's going to lose a year of life because of a Cooper Rush Monday Night Football game. That's on you. That's on you, Skip. Sorry.
That's some life priorities you need to reevaluate.
I would also say I don't think Oruwari is going to go down in history. Like it's the original Leon Lett. It's just like Dano running out of the end zone. Jimmy G did it last year. Nobody even remembers that Jimmy G did it last year. It's Dano's thing.
Nobody's
he did
done
first.
it with the panache of Dano, though.
Yeah.
Like
Jimmy G barely did it.
That's what I'm saying.
Dano was running next to cheerleaders when he did it.
People have stepped out of the end zone again, right? Nobody has taken on the cross country running arc that Dano took just to get the hell away from Jared Allen.
It was Lambo leaping away from the defensive line, thinking, what's wrong?
The point where you're hurdling, placards and advertising hoardings and things, it probably should have occurred to you that maybe this isn't still the end zone.
All right,
anyway.
let's get to number 2 here.
You feel better or worse about the Chiefs after this close victory?
I'm gonna guess better.
So much better. What a wonderful weekend.
And this is
It couldn't have gone better. It couldn't, because we see the Bills, who were this close to catching the Chiefs for the 1 seed.
True.
Listen, they played great. They played such a great game. We're going to talk about it later. Their quarterback probably locked up the MVP with a month to go.
Can you still rip the Bills?
No.
One of your teams.
I do believe in the Bills, and I think this year has proven out that belief was well earned. But I just love that the Bills, it's very apropos. The Bills can look amazing in a loss and have it help their quarterback's MVP candidacy. The Chiefs can look middling in a win. And of course, the question is, are we concerned? And this is the part that really made it a great weekend, Wilds. We get to add there's another addition to the Dopes complaints. We have Likely's toe. We have a properly called defensive pass interference. We have Tampa Bay not going for 2. We have Denver getting a kick blocked. We have needing a field goal against Carolina. We have a fumble against the Raiders. And now we have, as called on the broadcast, the doink for the division.
The doink for the division.
I'm shocked that Nick was optimistic coming out of that game.
Yeah, well, I mean, this must be Christmas for him. Just for years. Imagine being, a Shouty Show proponent, a self-proclaimed Shouty Show proponent and artist, who happens to be a fan of the current dynastic team. That must be everything you could possibly wish for, right? It'd be like if Skip, if Dallas was in the middle of the 90s Skip, right? You feel like nothing can go wrong. No matter what happens, my team's going to find a way of doing it, and I can then troll everybody else off the back of it.
I think that was not a big part, but maybe a small part of Portnoy's rise with Barstool, because he always had that. It's not Shouty Show, but a confidence, and it was I'm just going to be brash about my New England sports teams, in the which happened to be coincide with the Patriots being great and everything. But yeah, I still don't understand the dynamic of analysts or Shouty Showers being fans and people liking that, unless you're going to hate watch Nick Wright until the Chiefs lose, just for his Chiefs analysis, not the other stuff necessarily. But I don't completely get it. But yeah, we needed to get Nick back on the show, and I'm not surprised that he is optimistic coming out of another game where they snuck through last week.
Yeah,
but they're also they gained a game on Buffalo.
Yes.
To get the number 1
seed.
seed.
I mean, you should be optimistic coming off the back of that. They separated themselves from Buffalo in the race for the 1 seed. And again, he sort of made this point on our show. Okay, look, there's a difference between the Raiders game, I think, is the best example. There's a difference between the Raiders game, which is a scenario from
the Raiders literally handed it to them.
Yes, you can pause the game at a certain spot, and the Chiefs should have lost that game based off none of their own actions, right? They didn't do anything to win it. They were given the game by the opposition from that point. There's a difference between that and the very easy chip shot kick to win this game got closer than it should have and doinked in off the upright, right? That's a game where you pause it before the kick and you're like, they should, like, what happens to this game to a random fan, right? They go, well, the Chiefs win. So the Chiefs win. The right outcome came. You ask them the same question when the Raiders have the ball before that snap, and they'd be like, well, the Raiders win. They kick a field goal, they win the game. And the other thing happened. Actually, no, they managed to find a way of fumbling this snap. There was an old, like, sports kind of comedy quiz show thing in the UK, Question of Sport, where they used to pause, a sporting event at a certain moment. I mean, like, what happens now, right? And it was always something ridiculous you'd never be able to guess.
We should play that game with the Chiefs.
Right. But, like, it's that, right? What happens from this point on? Generally speaking, the correct things have been happening for Kansas City in terms of they are winning the games they're supposed to, but the Raiders game is one that they should have lost. This isn't that.
No, I agree. It's even funnier that it doinked. Like, as if he had missed it, it'd been like, oh, bad luck, Chiefs. Your third kicker just missed the kick, but now it went through. It was only a 31-yarder anyway. Anyway, Nick remains optimistic with the Chiefs. Let's get to number 3 here.
All I know is that New York fans, y'all owe Zach Wilson an apology. Zach Wilson was 5-7 was 5-7 last year. Aaron Rodgers 3-10. New York, y'all owe them an apology.
Yeah. You owe me
Now, y'all need
to
to put y'all money together. Put y'all money together and take out an ad in the Post, Page 6, the New York Times, the Daily News. I don't care. Whoever flew that plane over for the Giants, y'all need to fly one over for the Jets.
The Zach Wilson was done dirty is the take here.
Yeah, which is not true.
No.
And it's kind of silly.
Yeah. I will say, in sports generally, I don't like the narrative thing, the history will repeat itself thing. I generally push back against that. One example would have been the 07 Giants upset the Patriots, and then they played in the Super Bowl 4 years later, and it's like, okay, well, this time, the Patriots have a better team. Again, not as big of a difference, but they have a better team. They should win it. Eli can't be clutch again. He can't do – and the same thing happened, essentially. That's I generally push back against that stuff. Now you have the Jets, and here's the evidence for this year. You have Sam Darnold, former Jet, as an MVP candidate now in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. You have Aaron Rodgers, former MVP, showing up to the Jets and being 3-10. And we don't have any counterfactuals with Zach Wilson and what he's doing. But I'm almost to the point where it's like, is there something there? Is there something there? Like, would we actually see a different Zach Wilson if, for instance, he got to start for the Broncos under Sean Payton or got to start somewhere else? I don't know. I don't think Zach Wilson needs an apology, though. It's not like he played well. And certainly not just because he was 5-7 and Rodgers was 3-10.
Yeah.
But I do wonder how much, the playing in New York thing and the whole organization, I wonder how much that is
these are
affecting
different
things.
Yeah, these are different things, right? If you owe Zach Wilson an apology, you also owe one to Sam Darnold, to Christian Hackenberg, to every quarterback that's been in the Jets organization over the last, decade plus, like since the new ownership took over, effectively, is the argument being made, right? This is an institutional problem, and that, I think, that has some merit. There's an argument that's perfectly legitimate that, like, the problems with the Jets run deeper than the personnel, right? I think that's a reasonable point to make, but it's not really the point that's being made. The point that's being made is, obviously, this team was terrible and it was like the quarterback was fine, which is not the case. Like, Zach Wilson played terribly and deserved to be run out of there. Like, whether or not he was set up to fail that way is a different conversation. But you can't look at this and say, well, Aaron Rodgers has not won very many games. Zach Wilson won more. Therefore, Zach Wilson is better than Aaron Rodgers. Like, Zach Wilson, playing the way he played worse than Aaron Rodgers has played this year. So it's not the same. It's not, you can't just flip one for the other and say, well, obviously the problems were everything else.
You also have, and look, part of this is when you sign an older quarterback, they might be injury prone. Nobody's even bringing up, Rodgers is still 40, coming off an Achilles. How high should expectations have been anyway? Not 3-10, but maybe we should have considered that a little bit.
I think people considered it, but the rest of the roster looked good enough that, I was certainly making the argument that they don't need MVP Aaron Rodgers.
If they get their best roster in a while.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So if they get anything like I thought if Rodgers played at the level he has played this year, that should have been enough for 10 wins and a contending team, and it hasn't been. Like that's the issue.
I will say I've always been intrigued by Zach Wilson, and I will remain intrigued by Zach
You're still
Wilson.
intrigued by Jameis Winston. Like I think at some stage,
absolutely, I am.
Your desire to take on crazy,
who isn't intrigued?
toolsy, volatile
Who is
quarterbacks
not intrigued by Jameis
is possibly
Winston?
a red flag.
All right, let's get to the last one.
Okay. Niners 38, Bears 13.
Debut.
That game sucked. The Bears are a joke. They're so bad. They got Eberflus fired with a fired coach. You'd think they'd come out with a purpose. I don't know. Anyone ain't quiet? I mean, I'm done. They're in like the Jaguars pile of like what does it even matter anymore?
Fire Thomas Brown.
Yeah, fire Thomas Brown. It's just there's no point. Just get the season over with. Just get it over with. Was Matt Eberflus actually a good coach? How did he win 4 games?
So this is
Welcome, Big Cat.
This is like cable being replaced by streaming giants, right? This is Skip Bayless, the sad decline of Skip on Mount Rushmore, and he's now being replaced by Big Cat from online platform.
Yeah, that's true.
Pardon my take. And it's the same genre, right? Like the bummed fan who just watched his team disappoint yet again, and Skip just has been drained of all energy, right? Which is understandable. That's what happens when your team loses, but there's nothing there, right? There's no spark. There's no engagement. Big Cat bummed also as a Bears fan.
For the 6th straight year.
Right, exactly. For a I guess probably the same period of time, but.
Well, I mean, for 15 out of the last 16 or more.
Yeah. But, dealing with the same weight of disappointment is able to come up with some engaging content off the back.
He is.
I like that.
So what he's hinting at there is the thing that we always talk about is the Bears were able to not even overcome the interim head coach bump. Other teams get the interim head coach bump, and somehow the Bears got worse during interim head coach bump week. That's why he was so upset. So welcome, Big Cat, to the show, and we apologize for the Bears. I wonder where they were in his power rankings this week.
I don't know.
Let's get the weekly power rankings.
Right.
They're probably pretty low in the computer power rankings from Big Cat. All right. We got some O-line stuff to talk about, but first we've been announcing we are thrilled that we're going to be joining our friends over at Circa for Week 18. Week 18, huddle up at Overhang. It's one of the premier destinations for sports fans in Las Vegas. We'll be there for the finale of the regular season, broadcasting from Circa, checking out Stadium Swim. That's the best place to watch games, maybe in the world. And the Legacy Club, which includes some of the best views of the Las Vegas Strip. We're hanging out there back in August. Beautiful scenery, great place to watch games, both indoor and outdoor. So you guys can come join us. We're going to have a little get-together, I believe, on the Friday night of Week 18, and we'll be there. There's NFL games on Saturday. There's the whole slate on Sunday. We're going to be there the whole weekend. So come join us at Circa. Sign up at the link in our show's description on YouTube. So check out the description, circalasvegas.com/huddle up at Overhang. It's easiest to get to it through the YouTube description. Choose the Los Angeles weekend in the date drop-down box, and come join us. Come hang out with Check the Mic, Week 18 of the NFL season.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting to do that. I'm pumped for that one.
You sound it.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
If you could just Burmeister it a little bit. Burmeister it a little bit better. Would be great.
I thought that was a Skip energy level. Just
it was.
disappointing.
It was.
Okay. All right.
Bring it.
It's fine.
Bring a little more energy next time. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to Circa. We can't wait. We're going to
All
see
right.
you there.
All
So,
right,
yeah,
fine.
Week 18 Circa. Check it out in the YouTube description. All right, it's time for we got Brandon Thorn ready to join us here, talking all things offensive line. Yeah, people have been asking. Everybody's been asking about offensive line shows. So let's get to it. Brandon, how you doing, man? Welcome.
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Anytime.
man. You got it. Tell everybody where they could find your work and what you're working on, and we'll dig into some O-lines around the NFL.
Yeah, you can find me at trenchwarfare.substack.com for my newsletter. You could subscribe there. Do a lot of pass rushing metrics there, offensive line analysis, film rooms, things like that. Bleacher Report, you can find all my college scouting reports on offensive line there. And just Twitter, Brandon Thorn NFL.
So, as an offensive line guy, first question I think is, what do you make of the current sort of state of play of offensive line in the NFL? Are we going through a lean time the way it feels like, or is this just kind of the way it is sometimes and you focus on the negatives, but actually the overall standard is no different than it was 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, I guess it depends on how far back you want to go. I would say, just over the last 5 years, this is pretty much par for the course. I mean, I think offensive line generally is in some ways trended downward as I guess it'd be a little bit more than 5 years ago when the offseason program changed and players got less practice time, less time at the facility, less time to just kind of go through live action, in full pads essentially. And I think as that has lessened, that's given players less of an opportunity to perfect their craft, because it's unlike skill positions, traditional skill positions, receiver, running back, quarterback, where 7-on-7, you could really get better, in that sort of environment. So not having that as an offensive lineman, I think you're sort of reaping the benefits of that a little bit more so just over the last few years. So I think that's probably a big part of it. But another kind of school of thought too in it is, offensive linemen, the transition from college to pro has been very stark and steep in the past, but I don't know that is as steep as it used to be. Just considering how much things have kind of trickled up, I think, from a schematic perspective from college to pro, and just how much the pro game has sort of adopted the college schematic outlook, just in general with the advent of the RPO, just passing becoming more important, but play action and, it's just, motion and all these creative ways to create advantageous angles for offensive linemen and so on and so forth. So I don't know if that's necessarily kind of an excuse anymore. I think it's more so just the lack of kind of time on task. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
One of the things I was noticing this year, I don't know if you're seeing the same from offensive lines, are they doing a worse job, or are some of the worst offensive lines doing a poor job of either communicating up front, handling some twists, stunts in general, sim pressures, some of the stuff that defenses are throwing at them this year?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think just with defenses getting more sophisticated in how they're attacking the quarterback, I think that has posed quite a bit of problems for offensive line specifically this year. Not to call anybody out, but I mean, I think the obvious one this year is kind of like, the Houston Texans, and just kind of their struggles to sort things up front, has been pretty glaring. But there's been plenty of units that have struggled with that. And there's a lot of games that are happening up front. Teams, defensive coordinators and defensive schemes are really good at wasting offensive linemen, which essentially means, pretending like he's going to be occupied and blocking somebody, and then the last minute, there's nobody there for him to block. And teams are really good at signaling out not just the weak links with their best pass rusher, but the best pass protector with essentially, tasking him with blocking nobody. That happens here and there as well. So teams are just really good at kind of dialing in and identifying weaknesses, and then also strengths, and taking those things away. And I think offensive lines are, to some degree, a little bit behind the curve a little bit right now this season in that regard specifically.
We've talked before in this show at various different positions about that idea you talked about, the lack of practice time, the lack of kind of time actually working on fundamentals and getting better at various things. To what extent do you think that empowers private coaches, guys like Duke, the OL masterminds thing? What sort of impact do you think those guys are able to have now on the NFL today? How important is it to try and make up that gap to what used to be in terms of practice time?
Yeah, I think it's huge, just because it's an outlet, that offensive linemen can have to actually get better, that they're not getting with their teams, when they're in the facility or on the field. And just that lack of time there, now you could spend that hiring, somebody like Duke, who is going to take a holistic approach in getting you better as well. It's not, not that you're going to be able to, have the pads on, but because it's a holistic approach, and he's going to work on things like your mobility, your flexibility, your ability to get in and out of compromising positions, go through the full range of motion. Just from your body, from the ground up, ankles, knees, and hips, taking care of those key joints, in addition to skill work, backside cutoffs, pass sets, handling games. And then on top of all that, you're going to be in the environment where there's going to be seasoned pros around you. If you're a young guy coming in, or if you're a pro that's coming in, later in your career, whatever the situation may be, there's going to be sort of that environment in place that is going to really contribute to you getting better in pretty much every single way you can outside of actually having the pads on. So, and there's other facilities like that as well. Not that, I am biased, with Duke and being affiliated with offensive line masterminds, but I think that is kind of the best environment for guys, just in terms of sheer numbers and the track record. But there's other people out there, there's other pro offensive linemen that do it and do it at a high level. So yeah, it's really cool to see. And, I think that's huge for offensive linemen today.
Yeah, that's what we've seen baseball get to, some of the individual skill stuff, and that's been a huge development in the last 10 years. So great to see football move in that direction as well. Let's get to some O-line rankings and, the best offensive lines in the NFL. We have a countdown from, say, your top 5 here, Brandon?
Yeah, we could do that. So I do offensive line rankings for Establish the Run. That's another company that I didn't mention off the top. But for them, I do offensive line rankings, and it is slanted a bit towards pass protection, just giving that a little bit more of an importance. So with that said, I do think this is probably the 5 best anyway. To me, there's really kind of a top tier, the top 2, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles and the Detroit Lions. I think those 2 offensive lines are probably the best units in the league. Just not really having a weak link, having star power at multiple positions, or close to it at least. So I just think, and then also the scheme that they're operating in, the offensive line coaches. I think you have to look at all that sort of stuff when you're ranking offensive lines, especially, the coaches being one of those critical factors. Just so kind of, what situations they're going to be put in, and the track record of success of that offensive line coach or lack thereof to develop guys. So that is just first sustainability factor. So I would go Philly and Detroit are very strong in all regards. And then after that, I think it's kind of dealer's choice in a lot of ways. I would probably go the Tampa Bay Bucks, number 3, Buffalo Bills 4, and the 5th one is tough. I go back and forth on this one. The Broncos, I think, actually have an underrated case of being there this year. I mean, I don't know if the Chiefs deserve 5, but their interior is so good, but it's kind of a stark contrast with the tackles, so maybe not 5, but, maybe the Ravens you could talk about a little bit here. Those would probably be the teams looking at my list that are vying for the 5th spot, but yeah, like I said, 1 and 2 are pretty, set in a tier, and then after that, it's, it gets a little dicey, I think.
What about the other end of the scale? You already mentioned the Houston Texans as a team that's really been struggling this year. For the last couple of years, certainly when we were at PFF, by far the worst offensive line in the NFL was Tennessee. Who have you got amongst the worst this year?
Yeah, I think those teams are in consideration for bottom 5 or 6. I think the worst ones are probably the New England Patriots, the New York Giants, Chicago Bears. I would probably put the Titans. They're close just because the right side of the offensive line in Tennessee is so weak. I think the left side is still a little up and down, but a little bit better. And then with Cushenberry being hurt, that hurts them as well.
Right.
Their center. The Seahawks have been pretty rough this year, specifically in pass protection. That's kind of ebbed and flowed. It's gotten a little better as of late with Abraham Lucas, but not a whole lot better. But their interior has been an issue. So, I think those teams, and then the Bengals, I think, are worth a mention as well. I think they're, struggle pretty heavily in pass protection in particular. So those would probably be the worst units to me, I think.
I wanted to ask about the Bears, especially, you did mention them among the worst. I struggle with the Bears because there are some plays that are awful. And you saw this on Sunday, right, where, center's defeated in, half a second and Caleb Williams has no chance. And then there's other plays where I'm like, man, he's got a pretty good pocket. And Caleb Williams is making it look worse. So two questions here. Are the Bears actually that bad? Because there's still a lot of plays where I feel like they hold up pretty well and other plays where they look awful. And I don't know how you balance that dichotomy. And then how much can the quarterback make the line look worse or not? I mean, obviously, you know how to look at just the offensive line and separate it from the quarterback. But to the average fan, how much does the quarterback make the O-line look good or bad, in your opinion?
Oh, that's huge. Over the last 4 or 5 years, that's been something just in my process that I've really focused on, is just that connection. And I think it's pretty inseparable, specifically in pass protection, obviously, with the quarterback and the offensive line. You try and separate it as best you can, but you only could go so far, I think. So with the Bears in particular, I do think it's kind of a give and take. So I think run blocking, they have their moments as run blockers, just because they do have some pretty powerful guys, both at tackle with Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright, but then also when Tevin Jenkins is healthy, he can move some people in the run game, give you some thunderous finishes, things like that. But they've just been banged up for one, which has been a part of it. They have, a backup at right guard right now. I think the center is definitely the weak link, and it's tough when the center of your line, the pivot position, is your weak link. I think that sort of makes things a little bit worse across the board. It's almost like a force multiplier in a negative sense. So I think that is a big part of it. But I just think pass protection wise, they're pretty below average on an individual level across the board. Maybe Darnell Wright is the one who, is probably your best pass protector, I would say, in terms of a one-on-one basis against, quality pass rushers. But then even then, we remember the Danielle Hunter game and things like that. Not that that's like a, end all be all. I mean, Danielle Hunter makes a lot of guys look silly, but when you're talking about very good elite level rushers, things start to fall apart. But you can't separate the fact that the quarterback, Caleb Williams, is, a little scattershot back there in the pocket. He really takes these exaggerated steps in the pocket, either, typically if it's going up into the pocket a little bit too far, then that makes interior pressure look a little bit worse than it actually is. It makes the guards look like they're actually getting pushed back further than they are, because he is stepping so far and so dramatically, in one direction or the other towards pressure. So that's a huge part of it. I think when you have a quarterback who is very subtle in his pocket movements back there and decisive, then that could change. That could flip everything on its head. Tom Brady being the greatest example, but other quarterbacks as well can really elevate things. So I think that's a huge factor and worth mentioning and considering when you're talking about pass protection for offensive lines. And I think it's a good point with the Bears in particular.
Yeah, it's one of the, it's the interesting but also frustrating aspect of football is that everything is interlinked. Like, you can never isolate any one thing, strip it back, and only focus on that. We had we were talking about a Sam Darnold play last week, right, where the edge rusher effectively not only gets pressure, but it was helped a lot by Garrett Bradbury being, driven back into him in the pocket, and just those two elements interplay. But with the Bears, you've got the worst play ever that we were talking about, right? Not only is Caleb Williams kind of chaotic back there, but also there are plays where he looks up and everybody's in the same place and there's nowhere to go with the ball anyway, right? Yeah. If that worked as a defense or as a play call, maybe the ball's out and we never see the pressure from the offensive line. So the whole thing is always interconnected and influenced by something else in every aspect of the game.
And I think that's why coaching is so important to factor into it, not just from a skill development perspective and the individual development, but also the schematic element of it. With the offensive line coach being, you could study him in just terms of run game success because they're the ones typically designing the run game. So you look at it for that. But then also offensive coordinator wise is big for offensive line analysis as well. Route distribution. That's a huge part of it. And if that's poor, then that's going to make the offensive line and the quarterback look worse too. So yeah, it's trying to factor it all in and put the pieces together what makes it difficult and fun at the same time.
I'm glad you brought up coaching, because I wanted to ask you, how big a difference can these sort of O-line guru coaches on coaching staffs make, and how do they do it? Guys like Jeff Stoutland, Callahan, how are these guys so much better seemingly than the rest of the NFL? What are they doing to improve these players?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a pretty layered answer. I think a lot of it has to do with consistency in their message, the ability to communicate at a high level, and then to really know what they're talking about. I mean, that's kind of the basis of all of it, right? You have to have a high level of football knowledge and IQ when it comes to offensive line play and how the five positions relate to each other, how it fits into the offense, the quarterback, if you're designing the run game, how to make that work. And the only way to know that really from the outside especially is to look at track records of just where they've been, how the offensive linemen have played relative to other places, if they've been at other places. And yeah, I mean, so I think that's kind of how you tell. But I think consistency of message, being able to communicate, knowing what you're talking about, and having also an emphasis on skill and skill acquisition and technique. Because I think a lot of offensive line coaches, people would be surprised in the NFL, from what I understand, probably a majority of offensive line coaches are heavily bent towards schematic teaching. Whereas there's some, like a Jeff Stoutland, Mike Munchak when he was coaching, and others, Bill Callahan, who are just their attention to detail with the technique is a differentiating factor in other guys. And they place a huge emphasis on that, during practice. So not having that and having kind of an unclear message as an offensive lineman is more prevalent than you would think in the pro game. And so when you do have it, it's a huge advantage. And that is sort of where people like Duke come in to kind of fill that void as well. Because if you're going to be dialed in with the scheme, sure. But how are you going to block this head up nose tackle that's bull rushing you and he's getting inside your chest and you don't know how to create lift in your bull rush? One offensive line coach could be just doing a cookie cutter sort of approach to everybody across the board, and you need something tailored to your specific body type, and you're not getting it. And in a sense, it's hard to blame the offensive line coach because they only have so much time in the day to convey their message and to get, get their point across and get guys dialed in and seeing through the same set of eyes and all that sort of stuff. So that's the priority. But the great ones are able to find a way. Assistants obviously are a big part of that too. So I think that's kind of how you look at it and what the things that at least you want to think about and some of the ways that you can kind of tell who the best guys are, aside from the obvious, couple at the top.
Some of the other stuff you've worked on, Brandon, true pressure rate and, different ways of evaluating, breaking down offensive, defensive linemen. What are you looking to do with true pressure rate, and what are some of the things that you found either this year or through the years?
Yeah, so it was born out of just looking at pressures on like True Media, for instance, which gets their data from PFF. So looking at, I'll look at let's just say the first and second guy in pressures. They each have 50 pressures. Player A, player B, and you watch the 50 on each, and there's a pretty stark difference in how these guys are obtaining their pressure. Let's just say 35 of the 50 pressures on player A are pretty high quality wins. They're beating guys one-on-one. They're put in those situations where they're, isolated against pass protectors and they're counted on to win, and they do. And then, the other player B, maybe it's 25 and 25 or even more negative than positive. And what I mean by negative is just it's circumstantial. He's in a good position because of the scheme. He's getting free on a twist and he's being unblocked. The quarterback is hanging onto the ball for way too long and he's just getting that pressure that way, or a sack. I do sack rate as well. So it's just looking at it on an individual basis and then assigning a very basic grading scale and point value to each pressure. So that way, at the end of the day, we could see which rushers are actually getting their pressure by beating the pass protector in front of them on a one-on-one basis using skill, talent, and speed or power. So it's just really, I look at it as another way of just adding context to the raw number of pressure and pressure rate that we typically see to just assess skill. And so I think it's just a tool for people to kind of add into their repertoire of trying to decipher who are the best pass rushers in the NFL. And I think this is just a good way to do that. But that's kind of why I do it. And just things that I've learned. I think it's just kind of crystallized just how dominant Myles Garrett is, for instance. I think how great Micah Parsons is, and just seeing how these guys win is, they win very differently in terms of alignment. I think that's a big part of it with those two in particular. But then this year, Chris Jones is leading the NFL in pressure rate, and I think that kind of goes against the narrative that we see, at least on X, on Twitter, and in the media, where his sack numbers aren't necessarily there. So people may think, oh, maybe he's not having a great year. And the raw pressures are still relatively there, but his quality of pressures it's just tremendous. He has 53 pressures right now, and I'm charting 40 of them are high quality. So that ratio is by far the best in the league. And that's why this metric exists, I think. It's just to identify the elite guys, and then maybe some of the younger guys that are also kind of, on fire right now and beating guys at a high level that people aren't thinking about necessarily. I mean, people are thinking about Jared Verse, the rookie from the Rams, but my metric is also kind of backing the fact that he's beating guys soundly, as a pass rusher. So, and there's also guys like Diaby with the Bucks, who most people probably don't know, but in terms of pressure quality this year, it's really good. But his sack numbers aren't there necessarily either. They're okay, I think. But yeah, so it just gives you kind of an eye on the horizon of maybe some of these young pass rushers that are extremely skilled, whether it's with speed, power, being able to set up pass blockers, and just kind of who's coming next, and then who is kind of the most potent sort of skilled pass rushers in the league today.
Really quick, Sam, before you get to your question. Sam was arguing with people on Twitter about Trayvon Walker today. So I got to ask, where's Trayvon Walker for you, if you don't mind looking it up?
Yeah, so Trayvon Walker's pretty low on the totem pole in terms of quality of pressure. So granted, the number, the volume is there. It's pretty good.
Always.
I think he
clean up sack guru Trayvon Walker.
Right. I mean, pressure-wise, I have him with 9 high quality out of 32, so 23 low quality. That ratio is 0.41 of high to low, so it's pretty low. He's not, lighting the world on fire necessarily. He has a couple really nice games under his belt.
He does.
Definitely glimmers of hope, but yeah, he's not among kind of the top guys right now.
Colts game was spectacular, but Trayvon catches strays from us a little bit because people push back using sack totals. So I wanted to get a third party view from you, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Based off your info, this feels like a fairly wide open defensive player of the year kind of race. Would you lean towards Chris Jones based off that information, or have you got someone else that would jump out as an obvious defensive player of the year for you?
No, I don't think that there's an obvious one. I would probably lean towards Chris Jones or Myles Garrett. I mean, in terms of from a pass rushing world, I can't speak to, if there's a linebacker or a DB out there who's deserving, but in terms of a pass rush perspective, I think those are the only two choices you really have in terms of defensive player of the year. I don't know who else you would say. I'm open to hearing, an argument for somebody else. I think if Micah Parsons he's missed 4 games and he's still just the same player he's been the last few years. So he's producing at the same level he always has. It's just the volume isn't necessarily there yet because of the 4 games missed because of the ankle. But aside from Chris Jones and Myles Garrett, is there anybody else? I think what Trey Hendrickson's doing this year is nice, especially from a sack perspective. But yeah, I don't know if anybody's on Chris Jones and Myles Garrett's level this year.
What are your thoughts on TJ Watt? Because he's been such a hot button issue for us too. With our PFF background, where we focus on every play, or always focused on every single play with TJ Watt, and it's like he might not do much for the game, but when the game's on the line, or every time he gets a one-on-one, seemingly wins. Where do you stand on TJ Watt and how he's been doing?
Yeah, the sack production is still really good. It's there. He has a lot of high quality wins. He's beat Joe Alt high quality with high quality sack, Mike McGlinchey, Caleb McGarry, Terrence Steele, Jermaine Illuminor. Those are his high quality sacks. So that's still really good. I think at true sack rate, he's 4th behind Daniil Hunter, Myles Garrett, and Trey Hendrickson. It's just the pressure volume is not there, just in terms of the sheer number of pressures. I think he's at 29 total pressures and 15 high quality, 14 low quality pressures. So a pretty good ratio. It's just there's just not a lot of them there this year. So I think TJ Watt is one of the 5 or 6 best edge rushers in the league, for the last 3-4 years, no question. And, top 1 or 2 or 3 in, a couple of those years. But this just isn't his year. I just think it's as simple as that. But he's still a great player. And people use my true pressure rate to kind of like, throw shade on TJ Watt, and I don't want that to be the case. I mean, I think it adds context in the fact that he's not having his best year this year, but it's still TJ Watt, and he's still a threat to end a game at any time and all that sort of stuff. It's just I think the wealth is being spread a little bit more there in Pittsburgh this season than others. I just think that's the best defensive line in the league, in my opinion. I thought they were probably the best coming into the year as well. I think that's the deepest edge rushing group in the league. I mean, Nick Herbig as your 3rd edge rusher, Preston Smith as your 4th, Highsmith as your 2. You got Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, Larry Ogunjobi. I mean, that defensive line is just loaded. So it's just being spread out a little bit more this year, I think, more than anything. And yeah, so that's what I would say on TJ.
Unfortunately, from years of long experience, there's no control you have over how people are going to use your data. They're going to use it and misuse it however they want, and you're just along for the ride.
Brandon, why do you hate TJ Watt? I empathize with you being dragged into those conversations for sure, which is why I'm dragging you into them as well with us today. Hey, man, we appreciate all the time talking O-line, D-line, and everything. Again, tell everybody where they can find all your great work. Appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I feel like this was a long time coming. I'm glad to talk to you guys. And Steve, I remember talking to you years ago with Ted Sundquist, the Football Educator podcast like 10 years ago. So it's cool to kind of come full circle there on that. But yeah, you guys could find my work, trenchwarfare.substack.com. For my newsletter. And then I mentioned Establish the Run, offensive line rankings, Bleacher Report, offensive line scouting reports, and then, just X, Twitter, Instagram, Brandon Thorn NFL.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Brandon. We'll do it again. Maybe draft time. We'll get a little some draft takes on the O-lineman. That sound good?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it, man.
All right, guys. See ya.
Brandon Thorn. Appreciate the time there. A lot of great stuff everywhere.
Yeah, new friend of the show.
New friend of the show. No, he's right. We were on a podcast years ago talking. He was never a huge fan of PFF. So at the time we maybe were butting heads on that show at the time.
Combat.
Right around 2015 or so. I remember.
He's a tall guy, but you got him height wise.
I do.
You got him covered.
Annually the tallest guy at the combine. Now that the other guy stopped showing up.
Right. It was tough for a while. You and that other guy.
You found there was one guy, like Bears Media or something. Who was that? I always forget.
I never knew who he was. Just the other guy that's Steve's size.
The other guy that's tall.
Yeah.
We got to tell you about our friends over at GameTime. This is where we get all of our tickets, live games, NFL, college, or whatever else you're looking for. GameTime Picks is incredible. So you filter out the fluff, shows you only the incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The curation makes it so much easier. Save money on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you might be looking for. GameTime has an all-in pricing toggle. You just toggle the feature, shows the total up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout. You also get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy it. And GameTime has a lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. This is what we've been using, Sam and I, every time we need tickets. It's GameTime. So it's also your GameTime ticket is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with GameTime. So all you have to do is download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code CheckTheMic. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic, CheckThemic, for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, man, we got Autopsy time and then my PrizePicks lineup next. And we're going to talk a little Bill Belichick as well. We're going to give you the best landing spots for Bill Belichick in a little bit here.
Nice.
Autopsy is today on the Las Vegas Raiders. They're 2-11 right now.
Pretty dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Currently in line for the number one overall pick at this very moment. If the season ended today,
very dead.
Raiders are number one overall. So cause of death for the Las Vegas Raiders, and we'll give it a little hope coming out of it as well.
Yeah.
At the end.
I mean, real cause of death. It's sort of, I think it's a coin flip between the inability to find a quarterback over the last couple of years, right? They've been in position for quarterbacks and haven't come away with them. They've been kind of jumped by other teams or haven't been aggressive enough or just haven't made it happen. Or the giving of a second chance as head coach to Josh McDaniels. I would argue, the worst head coach in the NFL over the last several decades twice. Like, remember, he took over the Denver Broncos.
Urban Meyer is the worst head coach, perhaps in NFL history. It's right up there with Lou Holtz, who didn't last the season. But
imagine somebody giving
like
Urban Meyer another shot in 10 years' time and him doing the same thing again, right? Like, that's what we're talking about with Josh McDaniels here. You listen to anybody who talks about his time with the Denver Broncos. His players can't stand him. Brandon Marshall hates the guy. They all talk about him as being terrible at just basic interpersonal relations. You know, they're like, yeah, he's got a great brain for X's and O's, right? The game plan was always on point, but everybody hated him, right? It's like, that's kind of a problem for that job. They're like, well, he was one of the youngest head coaches ever, you know, plucked from the Bill Belichick system. Like, that's got to be a weird environment to leave and then go into a new, like, it's understandable, right? But he's had 10, 15 years to sit back, to watch this, to learn from his mistakes, to, you know, understand where his failings were. I'm sure the second time will be different. And it wasn't. The second time was exactly the same as the first time, including the same level of disaster, only that team wasn't coming from as high starting point as the Denver Broncos were when he drove the franchise off a cliff. And it was just a train wreck. And okay, yes, he did stop short of actually kicking his own players, which probably differentiates him from Urban Meyer. But it's right there. It was close.
I think Urban's still in his own tier. We got to be careful, you know, 3013. You never know how many coaches are going to become our colleagues here any day here. So you got to be careful who we're talking about. But you're right, McDaniels wasn't
good at
great.
careful.
We're not good at careful at all. Could be a guest on the show soon. But I think there's elements of that. I think there's a little bit of what we said with the Giants, where it was kind of this overachieving year that was fake. I mean, the whole McDaniels regime, it was this halfway in between. Are we rebuilding or are we trading for Devontae Adams? I think it was, like I said with the Giants, I think it was indecision years ago that the Raiders, who, if you objectively look at their roster 3 years ago, post-Gruden Mayock era, it wasn't good. It was not a good roster.
Right.
And they said, let's go get Devontae Adams. And half their moves were like, let's rebuild, and half were let's compete now. And I think we're seeing the fruit of that. I will say the other cause of death for the Raiders this year, not necessarily in record, but at least in hope, is the Atlanta Falcons, who they play this week on Monday Night Football. The Atlanta Falcons drafting Michael Penix Jr. and leaving the Raiders out of the quarterback musical chairs during the draft. Now, they got Brock Bowers, and I think that's going to end up being a positive in the end. But if you're talking about hope for this year, the Raiders could still be 2-11, but if they had J.J. McCarthy on the roster or had Bo Nix or had Michael Penix, you would say, hey, at least they've got a quarterback, and they're starting this rebuild. I do believe in the long run, maybe it ends up better, that they have Bowers, who looks like a generational tight end, and they'll have a Shedeur Sanders, a Cam Ward, or whoever they end up. I think in the long run, maybe it ends up fine. But I think as far as this year's hope, it's like they came out of last year's draft without the quarterback. They double bridge quarterback in Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. O'Connell's shown some stuff, but I still think you're going to lean into him as a future backup. So I think a lot of those things added up for the Raiders. And then you have the Antonio Pierce thing, which again, I've been, future 33rd team colleague here, I'm sure. I've been vocal about Antonio Pierce, and the job that he did as an interim coach looked good relative to the McDaniels disaster that you highlighted, but maybe shouldn't have set him up for the actual full-time job.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's McDaniel. Like, McDaniel caused the other things. I think they wanted a quarterback in the last couple of years and just didn't find themselves in a position for it. 2023 in particular, right? That was the year where they're picking 7 overall. You've got 4 quarterbacks people are talking about before the draft. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and then Will Levis. Levis slipped out of the first round, so you can say, okay, they just didn't like Levis, as apparently did a lot of other teams not like him. And the other 3 were gone in the first 4 picks, right? So at pick number 7, they might have been thinking one of those guys should be available at the back end of the top 10, and they weren't. Now, you can criticize them for not being super aggressive like Carolina and going to get the guy at the top that they liked, but I think you can also say it's look what Carolina had to give up to make that happen. That was damaging. It cost everybody their jobs before they started to piece it back together again this year. I think it's a reasonable thing to say it was too rich. They didn't want to do it. But it meant that you didn't have a quarterback, and you came out of that draft with, Tyree Wilson as your number 1 pick, Michael Mayer after that. And then this year, same kind of thing, right? They're picking 13. They don't get a quarterback. They go Brock Bowers instead. And it's the same deal, right? There's 6 quarterbacks this time going that first 12 picks before. They must have been thinking at least one of those guys might be available where we're picking. Let's not go crazy. And they didn't. They sat there and waited. Whether or not they liked any of those guys or not, who knows? But, you come out of it with a tight end and then offensive lineman, you still don't get the quarterback. So
that's why I'm torn on it. As great as Bowers has been, he's great, and they're 2-11, right? But that's going to look better once they have someone they can trust under center, build some other, pieces around it.
But ultimately, it all circles back to, the big swing they took franchise-wise, institutionally, was Josh McDaniels is going to be the future. He's the guy. We waited. We saw him for 10 years in New England. He figured it all out. He's the guy that's going to recover us from the mess of the John Gruden, Mike Mayock debacle, the way that ended. Josh McDaniels the guy. And it was a train wreck. And now you had to go with the interim head coach. Whether or not you had to, you're stuck in that awkward situation. You haven't got the quarterback for a couple of years. I think the mess all circles back to that decision.
Is Dave Ziegler guilty as well? He came over. He was the package deal with McDaniels. They got rid of both of those guys.
Yeah, he always felt like just the, Josh McDaniels front man. You know what I mean? Like the sidekick, just the guy that was there with Josh McDaniels to make it work.
Yeah.
I feel like McDaniels was the decision they made, and then Ziegler's just the guy they're hiring with him.
So look, it's to me, it's similar to the Giants, where I haven't thought that the roster was good for a while, but they've had a couple of years of overachieving and overachieving, mostly with Derek Carr as the quarterback.
Right.
A couple of years ago they did it with Derek Carr. Last year they did it with Aiden O'Connell at times. I think the overachieving kind of hurt. It didn't get to that full gut it and rebuild. Even this offseason, bringing in Christian Wilkins as a big free agent signing, but they've got more to do. So 8 draft picks this year. Some dead money still. Oh, just to touch on really quick, the Davante Adams trade, as I mentioned, that was like when McDaniels and Ziegler took over, the Raiders on paper looked like the worst team in that division in the AFC West that's owned by the Kansas City Chiefs. And they said, no, we're not the worst team. We're going to go get Davante Adams and compete. So, because remember, in 2021, they made the playoffs.
Yeah, and I don't even hate.
And I thought but that's what I mean. Like, to me, that's like the Giants. It was a false positive overachievement in 2021. They weren't really a playoff team, and I think we saw that in 22 and 23. Say what you want about McDaniels, they overachieved in 21, and they came back down to earth in 22 and 23, or 22 in particular, and they came back down to earth this year again after some positives last year. That's the issue. I think the underlying roster has not been good for a while, much like the Giants roster has not been good for a while, despite the one overachieving year in 2022.
Maybe, but 2022, so I don't have a problem actually with the Davante Adams trade. I think that was an aggressive move to try and get the most out of a Derek Carr. But midway through that season, they then decided, actually, we're going to move on from Derek Carr. We're going to shut him down so we don't risk guaranteed money. And the reason we brought Davante Adams over here is now null and void. So you make this huge splash move, which kind of commits you to the quarterback you had that had been of the Kirk Cousins world of like, you're good, you're not great, you're sort of arguably trapping the franchise at this level. But at the point, the Davante Adams deal is an endorsement of that as a concept, right? Like, it's like if the Vikings at some point had said, okay, we need to go, like, instead of drafting Justin Jefferson, if they'd gone, we need to go trade for Tyreek Hill, right? The second you do that, you are committing to Kirk Cousins. Like, those things go hand in hand. You can't do that and then go, now we've decided this is too much, right? So the second they made that Davante Adams deal, I think that was effectively endorsing the idea of Derek Carr may be limited. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but he is our guy.
Yeah.
We're going to try and find ways to win with him. And instead, halfway through the next year, they're like, you know what? We're getting rid of him.
We're
going to start over. You're like, what?
And then when they go with Jimmy Garoppolo in 2023, last year, it was him and Aiden O'Connell. And Garoppolo, I think, was an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
There was
it's 2 years of not getting the replacement.
They supposedly loved C.J. Stroud. I don't know where those rumors came from, but they supposedly loved C.J. Stroud. Couldn't go up and get it. Like, to your point, they just missed on a whole bunch of quarterbacks. Even they were in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes, right? They were in on a whole bunch of quarterbacks, and always landed on Jimmy Garoppolo as a bridge quarterback, or in the case this year, Gardner Minshew as a bridge quarterback with Aiden O'Connell battling him for the starting job. So I think all of the quarterback stuff ended up not going their way.
Yeah,
so they're still in that mix.
But again, it all circles back to they made the decision randomly mid-season to be like, you know what, I've had enough of Derek Carr. He's out of here.
Yeah.
Which again is an exact retread of what McDaniels did in Denver. You know what?
Just took him longer to move on from
Jay Cutler. I've had enough. Get rid of him.
They got rid of him like day one, right?
I want Tim Tebow. But it's like, yeah, same idea. Like you had a quarterback of a certain level, and very quickly on, McDaniels decided he's not my guy. I'm going in a different direction. And it was the inability to find the next guy that caused him problems, right? In Denver, it was you bring in Tim Tebow as the solution. With the Raiders, it's 2 years of not being able to get the next guy because you were high but not high enough to get him. And so you have to bridge with Jimmy Garoppolo, you have to bridge with Gardner Minshew. Like that's the mess. But it all circles back to McDaniels' decisions.
All right, shout out to intern Anthony, who's done a lot of great work and research to help us out preparing for this. The Raiders have almost $30 million in dead cap, 8 draft picks, including 2/3. 1/3 is coming from the Jets in the Devontae Adams trade. What are your thoughts on where the Raiders go and how they turn things around?
Yeah, so the good news is this time they have a ton of cap space and theoretically right now the top pick in the draft. So you couldn't be set up better effectively to be rebuilding from scratch. They are second, I think, in overall cap space next year projected, third in effective cap space because we're talking some of that dead money. The only team in a better cap situation effectively is the Patriots, who have already hit that reset button and have their quarterback. So I guess question number one is, I suspect I know where you're leading on this, are you keeping Antonio Pierce as head coach?
I'm just saying he might be a colleague in a few weeks.
Well, now you have the decision.
I would not.
You would not keep him?
No.
You're moving
on.
on.
I see the chat talking about Mike Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel.
I am very intrigued by second chance Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
And I would bring him in for every interview, and I do want to know how much. I'm not saying he's got to read spreadsheets or anything, but he was forward thinking in how he managed games anyway. I want to know how well he's going to interact with the nerds. And if he can get along with the nerds, I think Mike Vrabel could be a great leader of men for my franchise.
I think you can broaden that to just other humans in the building.
Or other humans generally.
Michael, are you going to be an asshole again? Because that appeared to be a problem in your last stop.
I'd be intrigued by a Vrabel Raiders connection here.
All right, so step number one to fixing the team is you're letting go of Antonio Pierce. Thank you for stepping in, doing a great job as an interim.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you appear to have been found out as the actual head coach. We're going in a different direction, Antonio. So you're letting go of him, and then you're hiring potentially Mike Vrabel, assuming he's not an asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's our first job done. Then you've got a ton of cap space.
We're going to draft the quarterback in round 1 here.
Who are you drafting? Let's assume you have the number one overall pick.
Finish my evaluations here. Again, I'm going to be as soft as anybody on QB evaluations because nobody knows anything. But it's either Cam Ward or Shedeur as of right now.
Okay, so the Shedeur thing, I'm going to give you the rest of the time to watch the tape. From not having to watch the tape, to me, my biggest concern of Shedeur is the other stuff. I think he's QB1 in this draft on the field, and I have no idea if I want him as my franchise quarterback or not because of the whole ephemera around him. Deion, the attitude, the entitlement, all this kind of stuff, right?
Do you
want Deion, or do you want Shedeur and Deion as your...
I mean, are you going to get the rumors that Deion's going to leave Colorado if the Raiders have the number 1 overall pick and
Deion as the coach?
That they're going to be a package deal? Are you going to get that?
Would you hire Deion?
I don't think I would.
Is that a different answer?
Again,
whether or not
I
he
don't
comes with
know.
his son?
Like, I'm not trying to cop out here. I don't know. I would have to sit down and figure it out. I will say, if you told me, hey, Deion's going to have success at Colorado with 3 years of coaching experience, I'd say, that's unlikely.
Is he more or less likely to be a good NFL coach with his son at quarterback?
I mean, I think it's easier to do that at the college level than
Right.
at the NFL level. So less likely.
Less.
But there's a
Unless
lot.
his son's really, really good.
The reason why I was questioning Antonio Pierce is like the CEO nature of the job. It's a very difficult job. Can you handle all of it when you don't have that experience? To this point, it seems like Deion has been able to handle a lot on his plate as the CEO head coach of Colorado in a portal era. Can you do that at the NFL? You've got cap, you've got different things that you're dealing with.
It's also a very
and you have a GM that you're interacting with. You're not the star in the team building effort like you are in college.
It becomes a very different dynamic as well, whereas Jackson State and then Colorado, I mean, his son is unquestionably the best quarterback there and one of the best players on the roster and a reason that they're going to be winning games, right? All that is entirely debatable once you hit the NFL. What happens?
It's also Deion is he attracted Travis Hunter
Right.
to Jackson State because he's Deion Sanders.
Sure.
You might have that with free agents at the NFL level, but not at the same way that you can bring college recruits in.
But one of the biggest differentiating factors will be what happens if your son is not amazing right out of the box, right? If he's not unquestionably immediately the best quarterback you have and a guy that's going to be a difference maker for your team, how do you handle that? How do you get him to that spot? Because this is, I mean, the coaching job it's a very different coaching job, right? Trying to get a guy like Bryce Young. Bryce Young in Alabama looks amazing, carving up everybody, overcoming the height thing, and then year one in the NFL, it's like, this dude, what are we even doing here? This guy looks like a high school player, been thrown into an NFL game. This can't work. And it's been a very difficult process involving multiple staffs to try and get him back on his feet. And honestly, I think a huge part of that is quite lucky. Like they basically pulled the plug, and that did have a rebooting effect on Bryce Young, which I think was probably more luck than design by that team. Point being, if Shedeur Sanders rocks up and as a rookie struggles badly, I don't know how Deion's fixing that.
I might lean to the Cam Ward superstar. I mean, if I'm the Raiders and I'm trying to compete with Mahomes and the Chiefs and Herbert and the Chargers with Harbaugh and Bo Nix and the Broncos, I might lean toward the Cam Ward upside.
I'd also find it extremely funny if they hire Deion, who then drafts Cam Ward.
That would be funny.
I would laugh.
Knowing what I know about Deion, I find it unlikely.
Yes.
But hilarious.
But yes. It was like the Jim Harbaugh thing. He'd spend the entire draft process talking about how Shedeur is the best player he's ever seen, like J.J. McCarthy, and then draft somebody else.
And then it turns out Justin Herbert's the best player he's ever seen.
Right.
Now that he's has him. I think the defense needs a lot of help. Another edge rusher opposite Max Crosby. Offensive line needs help. Could use another playmaker. Everybody's going to be hoping for T. Higgins. So.
Yeah, which would be a viable option for them. In free agency, potentially, like assuming they let him go. It's, again, we're back to this. Theoretically, having the second most cap space in the NFL is great. You can rebuild. It is, however, a terrible looking free agent class on paper. So that's not helping.
I think teams are going to, we'll talk about it a lot more in the offseason. It's not so much free agency. Teams are going to have to get creative in the trade market. And when new regimes come in and there's valuable players there that maybe they don't want, that's where you have to strike this offseason with fewer free agents.
I mean, Malcolm Kuntz, I think, is scheduled to be a free agent, so keeping some of their own players can be a place where they do spend the money. Like that will be a part of it. You look at some of their upcoming free agents, there are guys that you would presumably want to keep on that roster. Kuntz would maybe be the most obvious one, but like they can spend some money on those guys. But I mean, we talked about Josh Sweat before as an upcoming free agent, someone that you might want to target. It's just not a great year. You're not looking at this saying, that's where I want to allocate $75 million.
So, as I'll say with every team, spin those 8 picks into 12 and start getting younger and, improve that roster.
Big draft for them. Like, they have not necessarily drafted tremendously well for quite a long period of time, and this is a draft where they really need to get it right.
We're just weeks away from fixing every team in 5 minutes, so we'll be going through every team doing this.
Yep.
Good?
Uh-huh.
On our Raiders autopsy.
So we fire Antonio Pierce.
This is more about the cause of death than the fix. You're tending to focus more on the fix now.
Yeah,
it's just
because people want to hear.
The fix is coming in February and
People
March.
want to hear how we're going to put it right, how we're going to revive the body. So you're firing
Vrabel
Antonio
and Cam
Pierce,
Ward over
hiring Mike Vrabel, and signing
Vrabel and Cam Ward over Dion and Shadur.
Yeah, there we go.
And that's how we're going to fix it.
Got it.
All right, let's get to prize picks. I got my lineup for this week. It's gonna all start with we got a Patrick Mahomes free square this week. But here we go. You guys can join along with prize picks lineups as well. Haven't hit in a few weeks here, but this is the week. Oftentimes I go, I do a lot of like buy lows type of deal, but I'm buying high here. Jordan Addison.
Oh.
Going more than 53.5 receiving yards. I'm, coming off that monster game last week and a couple monster games in the last 3. So Jordan Addison against the Bears, I'm thinking there'll be a little Jalen Johnson, Justin Jefferson battle here where Jordan Addison is going to get the love. So we'll go 53.5 receiving yards, going more than that number for Jordan Addison. Kirk Cousins.
Kirko.
Yes. So speaking of the Raiders, I had to wait till Monday night for this one. He's playing the Raiders. Indoor game again. I got him more than 242.5 passing yards. So I don't think he's going to get benched.
Apparently.
Right? Against the Raiders' pass defense. All their other playmakers are still looking fine. Just a passing yard projection. We got this. So I get Kirk Cousins going more than 242.5. No interceptions involved here.
Well, I was going to say, throwing interceptions arguably helps your cause.
Right. It does. Yeah. So, get into a shootout with the Raiders. So I think they're going to move the ball.
He can throw as many picks as he wants, just as long as they don't get him benched.
They're going to move the ball against this Raiders defense. And then I'm going Tony Pollard, man. He's running the ball extremely well. I'm going more than 66.5 rushing yards for Tony Pollard. He's been over 100 in 2 of his last 3 games.
Tony Pollard or Thing Pollard, as your autocorrect sent it into the chat.
Yeah, I typed it from my phone. Thing Pollard.
Thing Pollard.
Which his real name's Tony.
It is.
And as I said, prize picks this week, you got a Patrick Mahomes free square. If he does not get this projection, there are some issues.
Yeah.
More than a half passing yard.
Well, it's one of those great ones where the chances are, if he's not hitting that, he got injured, so you get rebooted anyway.
It would get rebooted. Yeah. So here we go. The 4 players in my lineup: Jordan Addison, more than 53.5 receiving yards; Kirk Cousins, more than 242.5 passing yards; Tony Pollard, more than 66.5 rushing yards; and then Patrick Mahomes, more than a half passing yard against Jameis's Cleveland Browns this weekend. It's all brought to you by PrizePicks. You guys can join along as well. Promo code Check the Mic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5.
All right. I see.
You like my lineup? Is that good?
I do. I think Addison's been over that number 2 of the last 3 weeks, and the third one was like 2 yards below it.
More than 53.5. I mean, he's been doubling it. 2 out of the last
and the one
3
that he
weeks.
didn't was like 52.
Yeah.
So he's right in that area, if not above it, every time. I like that one. Pollard is the one that would be a little concerning for me, but I don't hate it.
All right. So we'll get your lineup tomorrow.
Yep.
And we'll break it all down. All right. It's Bill Belichick time. We're going to give our best fits for Bill Belichick for those who haven't caught up. The rumors were that he submitted.
Well, yeah, reports. You want to read the thing? Ollie Connolly was all over this yesterday. You might know him from the PFF show. He had, per sources, I'm told that Bill Belichick's negotiations with North Carolina college team include a guarantee that Stephen Belichick will be named the school's head coach in waiting. UNC is open to that guarantee. Discussions are not a bid to gain leverage with the NFL for offers, and Belichick is open to the move. That was then followed a few days later by an update. Belichick has agreed to become the next UNC coach. Belichick handed the school a 400-page, quote, organizational Bible with structure, payment plans, staffing choices, etc. Decisions on whether to commit with UNC, the decision on whether to commit is with UNC. He is expected to know their decision within 24 hours. And that was about a day ago. So
a couple things I've learned here.
Yes.
Thor Nystrom, friend of the show, brought up a great point that I was thinking and he conveyed. Essentially, when Bill Belichick puts it together, we call it a Bible.
Yeah.
When Connor Stallions puts it together, it's a manifesto.
Yes. How long was his Bible
like 600
pages.
It
Manifesto?
was more.
What was it on?
Michigan.
But just
Michigan football. Dominating as Michigan football. How to win.
So your argument
Michigan
would be
football.
that that's a framing thing from the
Absolute
biased
framing.
media.
Yeah, yeah.
I would
Absolute
argue,
framing. Connor Stallions, first off, there's only one Bible. There's no Bible. That's not a Bible. Neither one should be called a Bible. But
that's not true. I mean, there's several Bibles, translations. King James, Gutenberg, there's all kinds of Bibles. What are you talking about?
it's the one Bible. the manifesto thing makes Connor sound crazy.
Yeah.
The Bible makes Belichick sound, like the savior,
Like a messiah.
like a messiah.
Yeah. Okay. I would argue that it's not a
The
framing thing.
messianic college coach of Bill Belichick.
I would argue that it's not a framing thing, that it's a differentiation from whence the document originates, right? When Connor Stalions, who, correct me if I'm wrong, as someone who doesn't really follow college football, was the crazy guy on the sideline stealing signals?
Why is it crazy? The guy's just trying to
Was the low-level guy on the sideline stealing signals?
Say that out loud again, and then replace Connor
No.
Stalions. Wait.
No.
The stealing signals on the...
Stick with me for a moment.
Replace the name Connor Stalions
Stick
with Bill
with me.
Belichick, and then tell me if it's true. Or just say it out loud.
How many people were above Connor Stalions in the org chart?
Many.
Right. How many people will be above Bill Belichick in the org chart?
Just because...
How many?
0.
Yes. That's the difference in framing. It's a
You
manifesto.
prepare for the job that you want, not the job that you have.
It's a manifesto when you have no power to execute anything in the document. It's a governing document or a Bible, apparently. It's something else when you're the guy literally saying, if you hire me, this is what needs to happen.
Bill Belichick, Connor Stalions, sign stealers who write big, long documents on how to win. They're the same guy with different opportunities.
same guy.
That's the bottom line.
How many wins differentiate them?
There's a couple hundred.
Yeah.
300.
Okay. Got it.
Stalions, I think he went winless in high school.
Further on Ollie Connolly tweets, Belichick Bible would require historic levels of investment from the school, includes salary minimums, position by position, and a willingness to hire 2 staffs, a coaching staff run by Belichick and a recruiting staff run by a sitting college GM, GM, who would require a buyout.
I don't mean to pour water on that. He just described how a college team is run across the nation.
Yeah.
Every team is building an NFL front office.
Now, yeah, but he's already.
But he's described the standard.
Right, but he's
a co-worker though here at 33rd, so
he's also
good for Bill.
He's codifying it and saying this is a requirement of even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Belichick has a college and pro version of his updated manual now, and has it shared with other schools and NFL teams. But he drafted a new one specific to UNC that touched on every aspect of the program in school.
Changed the logos.
We'll need to sign off.
Change the logos from Giants to UNC,
etc. Anyway, so that's the state of the play.
Give me your top 5. So either way, I was poo-pooing the idea that Bill Belichick actually wanted to go to UNC, but if he's gonna, finagle his son head coaching job out of it,
well, it's a succession plan.
I when I negotiated with 33rd, I was like, Harry's gonna take over the podcast in 20 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Where the hell did I put
why
this?
wouldn't I leverage that? It's in our Check the Mic Wednesday show rundown document.
Oh, good, because it's also in this text chat
that we're all working from.
Yeah.
All right, you give your top 5. Bill Belichick fits, and then I'll give mine.
We touched on this briefly on the Monday Night Football reaction show, I think, where we were discussing Mike McCarthy. I think that was where it came up anyway recently. And my problem is I still think it's actually not a great fit for Bill Belichick to be hired many places. I think it's just a tough sell. That's why he didn't get a job last offseason. I think it's why he's going to struggle to find one this offseason in the NFL. And I think it's where the college stuff is coming from. Like, the dude wants back into the game, and I don't think the NFL is busting the door down, right? So I think, based off this reporting, UNC is by far the most likely place for Bill Belichick to be coaching next year.
Further reports that their board of trustees is meeting today, which is a necessary step to conclude the football hiring process.
Correct. So I think if I was setting the odds, right, this would be like minus 2,000 as by far the most likely thing to happen. My second most likely thing is that John Mara is so bummed out by the Saquon Barkley thing and people flying planes over a stadium that Mara's going to blow it all up, and he needs a radical change. What's a radical change going to be? Turn it all over to Bill. Let Bill fix it all. Go back to the 80s Giants. We'll be winning again. Glory years. We can wheel Bill Parcells out. It'll be great. So, Giants, number 2. Number 3, what is the only thing that Bill Belichick loves more than just coaching ball, the game, history?
Lacrosse?
No. Navy. Now, look,
yeah, that's true.
Navy had a good season, so it's not like they're going to fire their coach, but maybe their coach gets a better job. And if he leaves, Bill Belichick would save Navy.
Would he run the option?
The Service Academy.
He would run the option there.
Yeah, it's a historical, true to the team. Number 4, I guess there's some weird world where Bill Belichick and Jerry Jones actually coexist. They seem to have a good relationship, whatever that's worth, and that's basically the only prerequisite to having a job in Dallas. So the Cowboys would be my fourth outlier. And then number 5, both college and the NFL determined that Bill Belichick is more hassle than he's worth, and he ends up coaching some local Foxborough high school or something just to stay in the game. Man loves ball.
Fuck, he should go to Foxborough High School the number of times that he was disparaging them.
Exactly. So he's going to go in and fix that program.
I like it.
I wonder if he has a manifesto for them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Or a Bible.
How do you recruit at the local public high school where you can't recruit?
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Yeah,
So that's my 5.
The high school Bible's like 10 pages.
UNC by a mile, the Giants, Navy, Dallas, and then some random local school.
All right, we got to get to lunch, so I'm going to count down quickly the way that producer Ben suggested that we do it. I'm going to count down from 5.
Okay.
Number 5, Bill Belichick is going to become a writer, because if he's cranking out 400-page manifesto Bibles, then he could write anywhere. Okay, so I think he could become a writer next year if he wants to.
Doing O-line rankings?
He's been doing O-line rankings, absolutely. He can
Listicles?
Yes, mock drafts. Oh, imagine his mock drafts. Belichick, a writer.
Okay.
Number 4, I think his best fit is right here at the 33rd team.
He's already with this.
So yeah, but I'm saying for next year.
Somewhere else is a writer. Why wouldn't he write for us?
I mean, he'll go everywhere.
Okay.
A writer but at the 33rd team in the current role that I still haven't run into him at the water cooler yet, but he's a coworker.
JJ.
So I think continuing at the 33rd team would be a great job for Bill Belichick.
JJ in the chat, Belichick.substack.com.
Bill Belichick Substack. He just starts like unleashing a few pages of the manifesto every few weeks.
Yeah, excerpts, like they did serialized, in a newspaper. It's just Bill Belichick substacking out his manifesto.
This is chapter 12,
Bible.
NIL distribution.
Yeah.
Number 3 is UNC. I think it's the third best fit.
3?
It's the third best fit. It's the most likely now. Yeah, you're right. Odds minus 2,000. It's the third best fit. I still think you would start at the NFL level. The NFL level being the Cowboys at 2, who you have at 4 on your list. I'll take the Cowboys, and he goes there, and Jerry, and they're like, yeah, okay, this is what we're doing. Jerry, it's a good foundation to build upon. It's a great fit. And then number 1 is the Giants. Because he's nostalgic.
Yeah.
And everything that you said. He likes the Giants. He hates the Jets.
Yeah.
He likes the Giants.
Right.
Still appreciates the Giants, even though they beat him in the Super Bowl twice. That's where he became famous Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator. Before he got his first head coaching job, he goes back to save the Giants.
All right.
And all this could be moot by the end of the day when UNC's Board of Trustees approve him as the head coach
of
at
UNC.
UNC.
I was right.
Could be you were right.
Yeah.
UNC being your top fit.
Correct.
Anyway, fun show, good times. Appreciate Brandon Thorn for joining. Appreciate all the Shouty Shows. Appreciate everybody else for joining us, listening, and watching. Don't forget, send in your quirky stats, favorite NFL stats. Historically, we've got some merch giveaway. And then tomorrow, we're already to week 15, previewing every single game right here, live, 10:30 a.m. on YouTube. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow with more Check the Mic.